Hello everybody, sorry you have to listen to me tonight in my raspy voice, but sorry, that's how it is. When we first started talking about the class, I didn't know it was going to be recorded. So of course, when I'd set everything up, I just thought I would be talking to everybody here and not there, so anyway. But before we get started, in case you haven't heard, Kathy German's mother passed away. And so Kenny, why don't you pray for them, if you would, and we'll just start there.
Father, we do come to you on behalf of Kathy and her family, Lord, in the loss of her mother. Just ask that you comfort them and be with them. Just bless, Father, and strengthen them, Father. We thank you for your goodness, your mercy. Pray that you'll bless now in this time we have, Lord, and that we might learn what we need to know, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you. So Kathy, we do send you our love and our condolences. So tonight what we're going to do is basically review what we've already taken in. Can you hear me all right? What we've taken in, and then just talk about a few more final things. So the first week we had Scott and Dwayne from Graham, and I thought they did excellent. And for those of you who maybe wasn't here, they did leave, for those that was here, they gave us these books. And if you'd like to look at mine, or if you would like for me to see if I could get you one, it has wonderful, wonderful information. As you know, that first night I did a lot of the asking questions, and had I already had this book, I wouldn't have had to ask those questions. Because a lot of those questions are answered in here. One page is talking about pre-planning, and that is one of the things that the reason why we had this class was to talk about why it's important to pre-plan. And this goes in depth about it. Why pre-plan, prepayment options. It talks about funeral arrangements, burials, viewings, cremations. It just goes on and on and on, lots of details. So this is a wonderful book, and maybe you don't need it, but maybe somebody else, you could give it to them. But it has a lot of information on it. So the only thing that someone asked me afterwards, and Scott told me, and so I wanted to pass on that information, is you do not have to buy your headstone from the funeral home or from the cemetery. You can buy it from other places of your choice, with the exception of the VA or the veterans. You have to get theirs. But if you want, OGG Stoneworks in Portsmouth is where they recommend and who they work with, and feel like they give you a much better price if you need a headstone for any reason. So I thought they did an excellent job. And they, remember, said that you are welcome to come in, call, make an appointment, come in and talk to them about any arrangements that you would like to pre-make, or if you've already pre-made yours and you just have questions, or you want to make it with them, or because they do things a little bit different. I have used them myself with our family, and have been very pleased with them. Also, and maybe we could, hey, come on in. Maybe we could also use some of these things even now with the passing of Kathy's mother. I think our church family does a wonderful job of reaching out when someone does pass away. But in here is a page that's talking about helping a friend or a neighbor cope with loss. And some of the things which I wrote down before I actually read the page, is to go and just house sit with them. If you don't know, a lot of people target people's homes when there's a death because they know everyone's gone to the funeral or to the visitation. So it's wise if someone offers to stay at your house during that time to have someone there. Or maybe if somebody is coming from out of town and they haven't arrived yet, maybe you could be there at the home and greet and meet them. Some of the other things is if someone has family coming from out of town, You could offer to help pick them up at the airport, provide transportation. These are just some little things, but they do help. Down the road, a lot of times everybody comes for the funeral, and you appreciate that, and you need that love and that support. But after the funeral, they're talking about in here, and I agree so many times, 3 days later, and then all of a sudden you're alone, and you think, oh, what do I do now? And so some of the things that they talk about is contact that person for a few months. Just, hey, how are you doing? You want to go to lunch? Is there some way I can help you with going to pay a bill, to figure something out? Can I take care of your dog while you go out of town for the weekend and just get away? Once again, house sit for them. Help with thank you notes. I know for me personally, that was a thing. It was just like, oh, people were just so great. But man, did I have thank you notes. And that was a good problem. But if you have time, a lot of times we'll say, let me know if you need something. How many people more than likely is going to let you know? Most of the time they won't. So if you have some thoughts and some ideas for the person, call them up and say, hey, have you done those thank you notes? Can I come by and either help you write them or sit and talk while you write them or whatever? Another thing is when you visit someone, talk about their loved one. It's their loved one. And even for me now with RW, it's been 8 months. And one of the hardest things for me is I don't want people to forget him. But then again, I know people feel awkward, like, oh, well, if I talked about him, then she's going to cry. But that's okay. You've thought about my loved one. I know you've thought about my loved one, and I appreciate that. So talk about their loved ones. When we talk to Kathy, ask her about her mom. I've met her mom a few times, but I don't know a lot about her. Ask her, let her share about her mom, her mom and the memories and the fun times. I am so thankful that she just, within the last month, I lose track of time, was able to take her mom on a trip and to see her dad's family, because her dad was the one that was having all the health problems. And so she and her mom had a wonderful time, and I'm so, so thankful that they were able to have that time. Some other things that I thought about was we most usually take food, and that's always a help during that busy time when they have a lot of people coming in, and that's always helpful. But maybe some other things that you haven't thought about taking is trash bags, Ziploc bags to put extra food in, paper towels, toilet paper, napkins, cups, things like that they go through because they have a lot of people coming and stopping by. And I know Scott was saying from Graham that not all funeral homes work alike, and they don't. And this was really a surprise to me years ago when one of our loved ones had passed away, and the family members chose another funeral home. And that was fine, and they did everything nice. And the thing that they did, and I thought, oh, this is so, this is very thoughtful. They gave a plastic bag, and it had cups and plates and napkins and forks and spoons in it. And it had the name of their company stamped on it. So, advertisement, which is nothing wrong with that. And I thought that was very kind. Well, later on, when I was helping the family member and we were looking at the itemized things, I realized it wasn't just out of the goodness of their heart. They were charged for those things. And you think, wow, which I understand because a funeral home is a business and they are there to make money. I understand all that. They are there to offer a service. But I'm thinking, and I know if they did that for everyone, that it would definitely add up in expense. But maybe if you take the cups and plates and napkins and stuff and they don't get them from the funeral home, then you're saving them some money and helping out. So that's just different things, each time you're, if you're involved, like Scott said, each service and each funeral is different. Don't forget to write down what you want. This whole class was to get you prepared so your loved ones know what you want, and so you know what you need to do for when that time comes. Another thing that we didn't discuss that I was totally shocked, and maybe you all are not, I have some papers here. Flowers. When you're talking about a funeral, you think of flowers. Why do we send flowers? Anyone? Why do you send flowers when somebody passes away? Show sympathy, show you care. And a lot of times we send flowers out of town. And unless the people send us a picture, we don't realize, we can say, oh, $25, $30, $50, $75, whatever. And then I know I have been surprised of the cost of flowers. But I've been to a funeral one time, and it was years ago. It was an older gentleman, and most of his family had passed away, and his friends, and that's what happens when you outlive, people. And he had no flowers. And I used to think it was a waste of time and a waste of money. But boy, I went out and bought potted plants and took, because it was like, to me, and I know that this isn't the true statement, but just to me, it was like no one cared. And I'm sure, there was a few people, but like I said, he was older and stuff. So flowers show you care, and that you're thinking about them. But if you've never, and this, I'm just going to leave this up here. Bonnie just gave us some flowers, different arrangements and stuff, and price list back here, just so you'll have an idea, of what flowers cost, especially if you're sending them out of town. You might call a florist and they might say, oh, $50 is, a good amount. And then you get a picture and it's this little vase, and you're thinking, I paid $50 for that? Surely I could have done better. Here's some papers, and if anyone's watching, you want copies of this. This is about flower etiquette. I didn't know that they had such thing as flower etiquette for funerals, but they do. So if you haven't thought about that, this right here, how much would you think flowers cost to put on this to send? Probably $100. $150 minimum. Because the flowers, and you look at that and you think, oh, there's not much to it. But when I was talking to Bonnie, she just said, you don't realize how many flowers it actually takes. So, you look at that and you think, oh, I'll send that. And then you get the price of $150 and you're thinking, what in the world? So anyway, if you want to look at a book, just to get, just to look, just to see what the going prices is in case you ever have to send flowers or want to. The information's up here. Let's see, I think that was all as far as the funeral home that I wanted to just kind of touch base on. The next thing was Linda. Linda Sharfie came last week. I thought she really gave us a lot of information, and I appreciate her time. She is willing to come back again if we can set up a time and if there's interest in talking about the financial aspects of, of an estate. What should you do beforehand? Why is it important? And things like that. But she does have 2 classes, and it's free, that if you would like to go, I'm going to leave this paper up here if you didn't get one. And for those of you who are listening, September 22nd and December 1st, the class is at her office, which is behind Lowe's and Home Depot on Independence. And then over in Chesapeake Square area, that same class is in October. And she just asked that you call and sign up for the class. And remember, if you go to the class, it's free, but she also gives you the book that Estate Planning Secrets You Cannot Afford to Ignore. I had one person that told me that she didn't know but was glad to learn about whether you should put someone on your checking account or not. And Linda's suggestion was, of course, if you're a spouse, your spouse is on there. But instead of adding someone to your checking account, do a POA. And that POA gives them the power to write or help write your bills while you're alive. But if you're in the hospital and you can't do it for whatever, you have tremors and you're shaking, just can't sign your name, or if you're in a coma or whatever. And I did want to mention, in case those who haven't had this done, I think it's about, don't quote me, I have not heard back from Linda for sure, but I'm thinking it's like $100, $125 to go through her, and maybe some other people know different places to get a POA done. But I did want to mention that there are two different types of POA, and this one's on a big piece of paper. But this one is for financial and property and business business. This is the power of attorney. So if you give somebody power of attorney in that aspect, then they can do whatever they need to do for your business. The other one is a medical POA. And do you have some things that you would like to share about a medical POA, Doc?
Just to say that they usually, you set an expiration date on them, usually they're not indefinite.
They're not indefinite,
If
okay.
they're not indefinite, you have to, usually they'll set a date, if you don't, usually they'll make it a year. So you have to be right, you have to check your paperwork, if you have a family emergency and it's past the expiration date, you pull that power of attorney out and it's expired, you're out of it.
Okay.
So check on papers like that you have for loved ones or family members and see if it needs to be renewed.
Do you know how often they have to, like this one doesn't have an expiration date?
We have a local lawyer that we're using for power of attorney, medical.
Right. Do you know how long the power of attorney is good for?
We put, I don't think on ours was like 3 years or something.
Oh, okay.
Like that. I think it was something of that sort.
Okay.
Because things change, people, lives change.
Right.
Move on and
Right, so if you want to change it or update it or whatever. And I know you can also leave this POA, the medical one, a copy with your hospital. They keep it on their file. And that way, if for some reason they have to contact you and you're out of town, then they have it on file, and then they can talk to you on the phone and know that it's okay to talk to you.
there's also another piece of paperwork that people really ought to look into, and it's called, it's not a trust, it's a living,
Living will?
there's a living will, and there's a medical
Advanced
advance directive.
Oh, okay.
Advance directive is really something they're gonna ask you that at the hospital if you've got that, because that is there to be used. It usually has to be, you've got to be able to coherent when you get it done.
Okay.
Advanced directive, because then that individual has the authority to make decisions. Now, you can revoke it at any time,
Okay.
but it's really important. If you're the one in the coma, this is something you want to plan ahead. The advanced directive decides stuff like, are you one of these folks that like to give up their organs after they die? If
Okay.
you're not, you don't want them doing that to you. And you have that all in your advanced directive. And then also, I've given Mrs. Jones authority to make medical decisions for me, but I can't make them for myself because I'm in a coma, or whatever the situation is. Advanced directives really relieve a lot of pressure.
Okay. And that's different than a POA? Advanced
Yeah,
directive?
Yeah, advanced directives, medical advanced directives has got actually more power in certain medical decisions.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the power of attorney has a lot to do with the financial.
Okay. Do you have any?
Power of attorney can include both, and it can be the same person.
Okay.
Like my sister's power of attorney for my mom,
Okay.
and she's both. But then the advanced directive can be someone different, it can be that same person.
Okay.
So
So advanced directive.
written.
Okay, so advanced directive and a POA is both very important to take care of. And another is if you, is it DNR? DNR? Is that right? DN, right. So, and you keep that, you file that with the hospital as well?
Medical records can have that, and now that can be reversed. You can reverse that any time. If you decide, I don't want to be DNR any longer,
Okay,
you can change that verbally. According to me working in a hospital,
right.
a patient can do that. Either way that you go, you want to get the physicians.
Okay, so a DNR is do not resuscitate if you go code blue.
Which means that, and yeah, you don't. You just provide medical comfort measures.
Okay,
Often though, it also includes, they might provide maintenance antibiotics, but they won't do, you won't have, a ventilator or any of that
okay,
type of support. You don't want all that intrusive devices on your body just to keep your body alive and your brain is gone.
okay. So that's a DNR. Right, DNR. So, okay, so if you have more questions about that, Doc and Sally are both familiar with that. They can answer your questions about that. So some of the other things that we're going to cover, those are just kind of reviews in case you didn't, take notes or whatever reason. Another thing that I'm just going to touch on, is anyone in here an insurance agent by chance? No? Okay. So I know a little bit. I'm not saying legally I'm politically correct, but I know a little bit about it. But I might not just have it 100%, so check with your insurance agent is what I'm saying, because I am not one. And that is, do you need insurance, life insurance, and why? Who needs it and why? I personally think every adult needs a little bit at least. And why? And it's just like having car insurance. You have car insurance, you have a car wreck, it helps replace the car most of the time, depending on who you have. But anyway, that's the purpose of it, is to help replace your car. The same thing with your homeowner's insurance. You have homeowner's insurance if your house is flooded or if it has a major problem, that's covered. Some things are not covered. Or if you have a fire. Well, you have life insurance, and of course it's not good for you, but it's good for your loved ones who are left behind. How much life insurance you need? Well, that's between you and your family members. We know that Scott was talking that the average funeral, and there's other ways to cut the cost of the funeral. I understand that if you don't have one thing or versus another and stuff, but the average funeral is $12,000. So if you're an adult, 18 years old, and you're living on your own, maybe you need to think about a small life insurance policy. You're young, and you might think I'm healthy, but we all know young adults who have passed away, whether it's through a car accident, whether it's cancer, whether it's a drowning, whatever. So those people that would have to take care of you or your things when you're gone on to heaven, do they have the money? Would your parents have the money as an 18-year-old? If you're 18, you're out working, does your parents have that money? So if not, it's very inexpensive when you're younger to get life insurance. Dr. Valier, when he is here in September, if you have questions about life insurance, he can answer or help you maybe figure out how much you need. I know that he told us, and this is who we went through, but you don't have to, Select Quote. They are online, and they also do advertisement on TV, and they are a term life insurance. And what they do is they shop all different companies. So they're not just, say, State Farm or Geico. They shop all the best companies and give you a comparison of like 4 or 5 different comparisons. If you go with, say, $20,000 life insurance, how much it would be, and those things. I know that there's insurance out there, life insurance, that's whole life. A lot of older people years ago used to have whole life. I know that they say that it's cash value, that you build cash value. Like I said, I'm not an agent, so I'm just giving you information for you to check on it for yourself. I know my mom had a cash value life insurance policy for 40 years. And when she went to cash it in, hers was $1,800. after 40 years. But they sell it that you're going to, it helps you. Well, Mr. Value's philosophy is buy term, not select, buy term life insurance and save the difference. You come out better than whole life. Whether that is correct and good for everyone, I don't know. It's just something for you to think about. I've heard that 3 times if you're the man of the house. Once again, ask Mr. Value. I'm just throwing out information. 3 times the amount of what you make or more should be the amount that you need to have. The reason being is if you're the main person who is the main provider, if something happened to you, then they would have your income to be able to keep on living like you have lived. And like I said, whether that's correct or not, I don't know. But I do know that term is cheap when you're young, and it increases as you get older, because the older you get, they think you're closer to death, which is true for most of us, but not all.
Oh, can I just add one thing?
Sure.
That whole life thing, and you're right, if you go to term, you can do it, but how that works, the cash value thing, as they call it, when you get it young, you get a really good price for it, and it does build cash value. But what happens when you turn, I don't know, but in 65, 66, somewhere in there, your policy does not go up in cost.
Oh, okay.
So you say, but this is the caveat, the way I understand it, is that money that you had for cash value, they're now using that money you had for cash value to replace the expense of keeping your policy at the same rate. And that's why at the end of that period,
Okay.
you really don't have a whole lot of money left, because they've been using after you, I forget the age, it's like
Right.
65, 66, somewhere in there, or maybe it's 70. I
Right,
can't remember.
right.
That then they start using that money that you've accumulated in cash value, the insurance company. And that's how they keep your policy till you're 100 years old. They keep it at, maybe $200 a month forever.
Oh, I see.
Is because now they're using that. And so by the time you do get it, you don't have this huge, never consider an insurance policy to be an investment in the sense you're going to make a boatload of money off of. You're not going to make, you want to make an investment, make it in a,
Something
a
else.
mutual fund.
Yeah.
They have a financial advisor. That's how you're going to make money. Don't count on an insurance policy ever. Insurance is insurance, protects you for an emergency. And whether it's whole life, universal, or it's term, they're cheap.
Right.
It has a limitation, like in the last 15 years,
Right.
20 years.
Right.
Then when you go to get your physical exam again, and they quadruple the price on what your term can be. So they got you coming or going.
Right.
So, but that's why at the end of it, she only had $1,800 left, because they were using the money
Okay.
she accumulated to keep her policy price down where they promised they would keep it.
Okay.
That's the way I understand it.
Okay, well,
So
you're probably right.
Tell me, but I think that's the way they explained it to me.
Right. Okay.
So that's why they can keep that policy, keep it from going up.
Okay.
And you don't have to get another physical or anything. You just go to your, 100 years old,
Okay.
or 120, I can't remember where.
What it is. And I'm sure each policy is probably a little
And so
different.
That's, if you want to call it a plus, but never count an insurance policy to make you a boatload of money. It's for your family. When you die, that $250,000 or $300,000 or $500,000 policy, that's for them. You're not going to make a big cash value when you sell it, cash it in. You're going to get shocked.
Okay. Well, thanks. I'm learning some stuff. Like I said, I wasn't exactly sure how. I just know that term, you get more for your money, especially when you're younger. But then once you have a health problem with those terms and your terms end, then your premiums go way up, way up. Daryl's is because his term is ending soon. We used to pay $681 a year, and it's going up to $11,000 a year because he's had a heart attack. So if you're thinking about insurance, go ahead and get some while you're young and healthy.
Yes.
You can get more for your money. And so thank you. I appreciate that. Does anybody else have any thoughts on insurance?
I would just recommend Bob Value because he'll actually point you in a place that will provide, that will support groups or people for And so you can, I mean, there's very easy to.
Right. And remember, Mr. Value will be here in September. I think it's the 8th through the 11th or somewhere in that time frame. He's willing to go over finances with you for free, investments, life insurance, any of those things. He has been a big help to us. So taking advantage of his help. Okay, has anyone, the next thing I want to cover is, Linda talked a little bit about it, and in the book that from Graham Funeral Home, it talks and explains more about probate and estates. Has anyone, I know Sally, you have dealt with this. Did you have to go to probate or no?
I did not until there was one small E-Trade account.
Oh, okay.
And there was not my name on the beneficiary.
Mm-hmm.
That's very important on your accounts if you have.
Right.
If he's got accounts and there's none.
Okay.
It's longer. So because it was a small, like under 15,000, it was very simple.
Right. To do.
Have the, at the time, we thought the will would be fine.
Right.
Which specifically showed where the money would go to, where
Right.
everything went to, but not any longer is that enough.
Right.
And it's got to go through the court, so then legally the will is, allowed to be used, and then they give you, a permission slip saying, give this to whoever
Right.
you need to,
Right.
and then they will release whatever they need to release to you
Okay.
in his name.
Right. So in here it talks once again about wills, estates, probate. What is probate? Who has to do that? Remember last week when Linda was speaking, she suggested and highly recommended anything that has to do with money, whether it's a checking account, investments, life insurance, anything that has to do with money. Check your policies now and put a beneficiary on there, because just like with Sally, one thing didn't have the beneficiary on there. So had it had that on there, she wouldn't have had to deal with probate. So anything to do with money, make sure you have a beneficiary, or you can have 2 or 3 or 4, you can have whoever and however many you want. But if you do that, that money does not have to go through the court system. No one has to know who it goes to except for the person who's beneficiary. So probate in general, and I have papers if anyone would like to look at any of them if you haven't done probate. Let me just say, when you put somebody as your executor, they might think it's an honor. A lot of times it is, but a lot of times it's lots of headaches for them. So it's not necessarily an honor to be someone's executive, but it is important that you name whoever you think will follow out what you want to be carried out. So, and each city does it a little different. They all have a probate court, and for Chesapeake, the probate court, once you go to court, and it's not really in front of a judge, you're going to the probate people, and I guess at some point everything goes before a judge, but you personally don't have to in the beginning. From the beginning of when you file to do the probate of everything, in Chesapeake it's 14 months before, at the earliest, that it can be closed out. Virginia Beach, it's 16 months. I don't know about Portsmouth and Norfolk. I've never had to deal with them. But when you go to probate court, I'm looking for the paper that Sally was referring to, in case those of you who have not had to do this. I might come up with it in a minute. First of all, you have to set up an estate checking account if you have to go through probate. as a whole. Now, each estate is going to be different, and maybe in your case you didn't have to since it was just.
Probably not show that to the camera.
Oh, okay. Well, you set up an estate account, and the estate, an estate checking account says the estate of the deceased's name and who is in charge of that estate. So that's one thing you have to do. Then you have deadlines when you do probate. Most of the time, the first deadline is 4 months. And what you have to do, and all these things cost money that you have to do, but they come out of the estate, not out of your personal money. So you keep your personal money completely separated. And so most of the time it's 4 months. You have to give an accounting, and that accounting says what that person has, their assets. You know, did they have life insurance? If so, how much? Did they have checking account? How much? Did they have, you know, whatever? And so then there's a formula of, after you do the 4 months, the inventory, of how you pay those bills. And Linda touched on that a little bit last week. And if you don't pay them in order, then you could be personally liable for them. And there's a formula, and they give it to you. And it might, and this isn't the correct formula, this is just an example. So they might say, okay, all hospital bills and doctor bills has to be paid up to 20% of the estate. And then after the hospital bills, it might be utility bills and taxes, filing their taxes, you know, and that might be 15%. And anyway, so you go through all these percentages. So before you close the estate, you have to meet with them, and they go over everything and verify that you've paid. So it's always good when you set up an estate account to get the carbon copy checks, so you can have a reference to that. There is a letter somewhere in this paperwork, here it is, that said you take it if you need copies of medical records or bank accounts or insurance policies. Once you go to probate court, they fill this out, they have a seal. You have to take this, and most of the time the copy of the death certificate. Sometimes it has to be the original, sometimes it does not, with you to take care of those things. Then in the end, so that's why a lot of people, when somebody passes away and, you know, they say, oh, grandma's going to give me $10,000, go ahead and write me that check today. And when you say, oh, I can't write it, they'll say, oh, are you trying to steal the money? No, I'm just doing it the legal way. You might not get your money for a year, 12 months, 14 months, 16 months, depending on where you are. So all these papers right here is just concerning the probate and the probate court. There's a lot, but most of them have been very helpful with the ones that I have went through. Of course, when someone dies, we all have our own emotions. If it's our loved ones, we feel one way. If it's a friend, we feel another way. And I believe God gave us those emotions for a reason. Not saying which ones are right, which one's wrong. Everybody reacts to everything different. But when there's a death and when there's things, just things, emotions can go really high. It can create a lot of problems for families when the loved one has passed on, if they don't have a will, if they don't have everything specified out, and you think, oh, I shouldn't have to specify things. I would say specify everything, because we all have our own feelings, and we all have that sin nature. And we all think, oh, I was grandma's favorite grandchild, right? And then your sister says, oh no, I was grandma's favorite grandchild and stuff. Now, who can tell me, can anyone tell me who this vase belongs to? Does anybody have any idea?
Are you a maker?
No, just who's it belong to? Does it belong to me? Does it belong to you? Who's it belong to? The person that bought it. Okay, thanks, Robbie. Okay, well, we're going to pretend that this was Grandma's vase, and she left it to Katie. It is Katie's vase, but it wasn't from my grandmother. And so Grandma doesn't want anyone else to know that she's given me this vase while she's alive, because my sister will get mad if I get this vase, because she wants this vase. And then, you know, Grandma dies and you say, oh, that's my vase. And she'll say, oh, no, Grandma gave that to me. Well, I met Max Paxton. And for those of you who don't know him, he is the guy who does hoarders. He also does estates, selling and things. So I'm just saying this because families are real, people are real, and we all are sinners. And things are things, but we put much more value on them than what they need to be. His suggestion is when a loved one has died, before anything is taken out of the house, when it's time to divide the estate up, before, you know, Aunt Susie comes from out of town and stuff, and he said that he actually had this happen to him, is that they were going to handle an estate of someone who passed away. And he said they always go in and take pictures of everything. He said, I mean, thousands of pictures. Open the cabinets, open the closets, open everything and take pictures to protect them. So as a business, so they're not sued. But Aunt Susie hadn't been to see Grandma for 15 years. And she came, and right before the estate sale, and she accused them of taking these custom-made drapes that Grandma had that she wanted. And Grandma promised them to her. And he said, I'm sorry, those are the drapes that was in this house. And on his camera, it has the date that they took all the pictures. And so he said, always take pictures to protect yourself, to help that there's not a big problem when somebody wants a thing or things that's in the end not worth it, but they think because they're emotional, you know, and they're attached to that thing, and in their mind it's real, and maybe they're not really trying to be unkind, but our emotions just, you know, have us all over the place when someone dies. So he suggests definitely take pictures of anything that you're in charge of. Another thing, so this vase, two things. You could put a little note inside the vase, even a little tinier than this. Somebody picks it up, you know, they don't know that the note's in there. Or you can put a tag on the bottom. That's, you know, have Grandma to write it in Grandma's writing. You know, for her to handwrite, this is Katie's. Because then they can't say, oh, well, you just put your name on there. No, Grandma did that. Furniture, open a drawer, put a tag on the inside. You know, tag stuff. That doesn't mean that you have to take it before, unless Grandma gives it to you before she passes away. But if she really wants you to have it, ask her, Grandma, please just put my name on that. You know, I don't want it right now. I want it later. And this is such a major thing that it shouldn't be, but it is. I know families that have not spoken for years after their loved one has passed away because of a thing. And it shouldn't be that way, but it is. You know, some of us are more materialistic than others. Some of us are more sentimental than others. So in order to save heartache, you know, put stuff on there. And just, you know, maybe it's not important to you, but it might be later, just to save yourself heartaches. And this is stuff that we think, all this, you know, we shouldn't be thinking about it, but we should. Because unless the Lord returns, we're all going to die one day. We're all going to have some kind of funeral or cremation, whatever it is, whatever. And if you do it when you're not under that pressure and you're not under the emotions, it is a lot better. Get your things in order. Your loved ones will appreciate it. So that's why I wanted to have the class. I thought if we could just share information and help someone else that they don't have to go through, or maybe they just don't know. Recently, a loved one passed away of a friend of mine, and that's what got me thinking about the class. For her, she had never had to be in charge of a funeral, thankfully for her. It's not anything that any of us want to do. It's not a pleasant thing, but it's something that has to be done. And so she didn't know, who do I call? Oh, I have to pay for flowers. Oh, I have to order flowers. I have to pick the songs. I have to do this. I have to do that. Well, and just like Graham says once again in this book, it is hard to talk about it a lot of times because you don't want the person to think that you're hoping that they die, very soon. So let me talk about your death. My mom and her sisters growing up, they talked about it all the time. It was like, please. They were in their 40s and 50s and they're talking about it. And it just got on my nerves. It was like, okay, yeah, I know where you want to be buried. Yes, I know what you want to wear. Yes, I know you've already picked out your grave and you've already done all this. But when the time came, I was thankful that they did it. I didn't have to think, what would she want? What would she not want? So it's hard, but it's important to do. So does anyone have anything that they would like to share, experience, something helpful, insight, something you learned, Sally, with dealing?
You mentioned, putting a tag on the base or whatever, but in a will, can you not just say, I want so-and-so to have this?
Yes, you can. You can do that in the will, but wonder if there's 2 red vases and you forgot that you had 2. Then does that person right. So right. So you can be as specific as you want in your will, and if you want to go through and think of those things, that would be great. But say you haven't had time to make your will, but you want me to have this vase, well, go ahead and put the name on there, and then if you don't, if you died for some reason, then my name's on here and the will's not written yet. So yes, a will would be good, but as you're thinking, as you're going through everything, go ahead and do it. And then when you're writing your will, oh, who did I say had that brown vase? You could go back and look even for your own self if you have a lot of items and things like that. But yes, so you can be as specific as you want in a will. Remember Linda said also in her class that there's a difference between wills and trust. And so if you're interested in learning the difference and more about that, Linda's class is free. For an attorney to offer these classes, that's free. I think that's wonderful. Once again, it's just information for you to have. Brother Ray, anything that in your culture or your family that because different cultures do things different, like on these, on that flower paper, it said that a lot of times Asians, you don't use white flowers in the flower etiquette. Now, I forgot the reason why, but it is here. So it's just little things that, that this paper talks about that maybe you don't know. Let's see. Because it possibly causes an offense that they say yellow flowers are traditional. I didn't know that. So, so all the information that the Graham Funeral Home and Linda and then tonight, it's just information, just to help you. If you haven't been there yet, you probably will be at some point, or maybe a friend or a loved one, and maybe you could help them.
No, we couldn't have been.
Nothing different than...
No.
No? Okay.
No.
All right. Anybody else have anything to share that, Joanna?
Bob Dyer does wills too.
Oh, does he? Oh, okay. Oh,
And he tells you how to take care of that too, so that it's a legal document.
okay. So,
It's probably gonna
all right. So, Mr. Valier, you're going to help us with wills, trust, finances. So we're going to keep you busy, hopefully, while you're here in September, and you might not have time to do the church books, but we appreciate his services as well, because once again, he does all that. Or if you just want him to look over what you already have down, make sure, like the doc said, update your documents. Make sure that they are updated if something's changed in your life. Sally, I'm not saying, I'm not asking you to tell me for sure, but now that Kevin has passed away, make sure that you have, his name, that you have whoever's name, your children or whoever, that you have beneficiaries now for your things, whereas when you and Kevin both were alive, it went to Kevin. You didn't have to worry about that. So update your papers, check them, get them out, look at them. So, go ahead, Sally.
Well, like the bank accounts and things didn't have to go through, but I had to wait a certain amount of time before they would release the money from the accounts, things like that. If I wasn't able to, go in and transfer it, things like that, it will take longer if you don't have that. Very important to have that beneficiary
Okay.
on those accounts.
And I'm sure a business account is a whole different ballgame from a personal account. So make sure if you have a business that you have those things lined up as well, or if you're in partner with whatever. So the main thing is just, take time, think about what you would want done, why not. Doesn't matter what somebody else thinks, it's what do you want. And put it in paper. If nothing else, until you get your will made, your trust made, if you have not had that done, write it on paper, go have it notarized. Just like we were talking about, could you write the will about this? Yes. Well, if you don't have an appointment or you don't have time, write it on a piece of paper. The library has a notary, so doesn't the banks. Go get your stuff just notarized. And that way, if something happens before you get to the next step, you have it done.
Bob told us to go to the city and go to a legal document. It's better than being notarized, and it takes just as long.
Go to the city and do what?
And have it made into a legal document, so they will have it on file.
Oh, okay.
And you go home, and then when you die, it's right there. So even if your family doesn't know, because sometimes people can throw wills away.
Right. And remember, if you have a will and you have somebody as the executor, if they pass away, you need to update that to a new executor. Because if not, you get in a big mess.
When you do that, you can have a backup executor's name on there as second.
Yeah.
You can only go so far.
Right.
I know we did that with ours, so if something happened to the first executor, we have a second one lined up.
Right.
So, but you just, you don't know in the future, you don't know when God's gonna take something.
Right.
But you gotta make plans.
Plans.
Expect you to make plans.
Right.
You're not gonna live forever, and you certainly don't wanna live forever in this world.
Right.
The way it is, so get a new world.
So tell someone, Kenny, if you're by yourself, I don't know what your plans is, don't need to know them, but make sure somebody knows.
Spell my name, D-A-R-R-E-S.
So,
If I need to sign too, I will.
but make sure someone,
My name's got two L's in there.
make sure someone knows where your papers are. That doesn't mean that they're going to come to your house and look through them right now, but if something happens, maybe you have one of those weird, crazy families and you don't want you don't want your children to know your business right now. Let someone else know. Just say, this is where my paperwork is if anybody ever needs to know it and stuff. So, like you were saying, have a backup, but even sometimes a backup of a backup is not enough. I am helping someone that I had to go to probate because the father died in a fire unexpected. And the two people, he had a backup, he had an executor and a backup, and his wife. They all three had passed away. So now who's in charge? Who takes? So if I can say nothing else from this class, just make sure and get your papers in order, because maybe the Lord will return tomorrow and we won't need them. But if he doesn't, then, you know, your loved ones will be glad you did. So I appreciate it, appreciate your time, appreciate you coming out. If you have any other classes that you would like to know more information about on a whole different subject, maybe we could do it together, question and answer or something like that. So thanks.